It was supposed to be another quiet weekday morning at Highland Oaks Elementary, the kind of morning where janitor Ellis Wallace arrived early to unlock the gates and turn on the lights while the world was still sleeping. He liked that early stillness, the way the fluorescent glow crept slowly down the halls before the chaos of children filled them. After 14 years, Ellis had become more than just a custodian. He was the building's unofficial heartbeat, quietly maintaining every corner while noticing details others overlooked. Most teachers barely registered his presence beyond a courteous nod. Students rushed by him, distracted by laughter or last-minute homework. And Ellis was fine with that. He preferred to observe rather than engage. Observation, he believed, was where the truth lived in silent gestures, tired eyes, trembling hands. That belief proved itself the morning he noticed the little boy who refused to sit. He first saw the child lingering at the edge of the hallway, hovering near his cubby with a backpack slung carelessly over one shoulder. At first, it seemed like typical first-week nerves, but Ellis quickly picked up on something deeper. The boy whom he later learned was named Mason Turner never sat. Not in the lunchroom, not in Story's circle, not even at his own desk. He would crouch, lean, hover anything but let the backs of his legs touch a seat. Mason was small for his age, maybe 8, with hair that constantly fell into his eyes and clothes that looked a size too big. Ellis had seen all types of kids in his years, boisterous, shy, defiant. But Mason's tension was different, like he was always bracing for something. When teachers coaxed him to sit, Mason would mutter things about getting in trouble, about rules that didn't make sense in a school context. One phrase stuck with Ellis: "If I sit too long, the bruises come back." That night, Ellis wrote a note in his personal journal, his private clipboard, where he tracked concerns no one else saw. He wasn't a mandated reporter, but he had learned to trust his gut. The next day, he discreetly checked in with the school nurse, who mentioned a dismissed concern about Mason's foster placement. The guardian, a man named Blake Turner, had insisted Mason was prone to manipulation. The system, overburdened and underfunded, let slide. 2 days later, Ellis heard a noise while cleaning the boys' bathroom during class hours. He found Mason hunched on the floor of a stall, blood speckling the back of his shirt. The boy flinched at Ellis's voice, but whispered, "Lazy kids get the stool." A stool, Ellis would later learn, was the punishment device Mason was forced to sit on for hours at home, sometimes until he bled. Ellis took photos, careful not to further alarm the boy, and filed an incident report. The administration promised to escalate it. Days passed. The result? No visible injuries observed. Child denies fear. Guardian cooperative. No further action. Ellis knew something had to change, so he set up a discreet camera near the drop-off zone. He watched hours of footage until, one morning, he caught what he needed: a slap to Mason's head as he exited the car, followed by verbal aggression. Ellis took the footage to his sister, a juvenile court advocate. Within days, an investigation was launched. Mason was removed from the home, but foster care was overcrowded. His file was marked with behavioral concerns. No one stepped forward, except Ellis. Despite his modest apartment, single status, and lack of fostering experience, Ellis applied to take Mason in. He passed emergency checks and converted his living room into a bedroom. Mason arrived cautious, his trust fragile. "If I sit, will I get in trouble?" he whispered. Ellis reassured him, "Not here." Over time, small signs of healing appeared. Mason began sitting for short periods. He colored a picture of a safe stool, free of pain. He spoke more, smiled sometimes. He even joined a reading group. At school, teachers took notice. Ellis adjusted his work hours to be home in the evenings. He made grilled cheese sandwiches and watched cartoons with Mason. Still, Mason bore emotional scars. He startled at loud noises, avoided physical contact, and sometimes froze mid-sentence as if unsure whether speaking would bring punishment. At night, Ellis heard him crying through the thin walls. He never barged in, only knocked and asked gently if Mason wanted company. Most nights, the answer was silence. But sometimes, Mason would tiptoe to the couch and sit beside Ellis, leaning lightly against him as if testing whether the world might finally be safe. Ellis began journaling every night, not just about Mason, but about his own transformation. He reflected on the moments when compassion had shifted from silent observation to courageous action. He wondered how many other children went unnoticed and unprotected, how many janitors, aides, and cafeteria workers across the country carried stories like his, but never had the evidence or the opportunity to intervene. When Blake Turner appealed to removal, Ellis feared the worst. But with the video evidence and testimony from past fosters now unearthed, the case crumbled. Turner lost all custody rights. Mason was safe. The school administration grew increasingly aware of Ellis's efforts. Staff meetings included discussions on trauma-informed teaching. The counselors scheduled weekly check-ins with Mason, who gradually opened up about his past. Ellis attended a foster parent workshop where he learned techniques for managing night terrors, building trust, and handling triggers. One day, Mason surprised everyone by volunteering to read aloud during group circle. His voice shook, but he finished the paragraph, earning a soft cheer from his classmates. Ellis watched from the hallway, tears threatening to spill. Later that week, Mason brought home a flyer for the school's spring play auditions. "Do you think I could try?" he asked, his voice almost unsure. Ellis nodded, helping him practice lines at the kitchen table under the soft glow of a single light. Mason didn't get the lead role, but he was cast as the narrator, standing, speaking, and yes, sitting in front of a full auditorium months later with Ellis in the front row. Ellis never saw himself as a hero, just a janitor who refused to look away. But for one boy who had forgotten how to rest, Ellis Wallace became something more, a guardian, a quiet savior, and a reason to believe that sometimes the right person sees you when no one else does. And sometimes that person wears a uniform, carries a mop, and chooses compassion when the world looks the other way. That spring, the school principal invited Ellis to speak briefly during a staff development day. Nervously, he shared Mason's story, omitting names, but emphasizing the power of paying attention. When he finished, the room gave him a standing ovation. Teachers wept. A few walked up to thank him, not just for what he did, but for reminding them why they chose this work. Mason, now with a more confident stride, began helping Ellis on occasion. Together, they planted a small flower bed behind the school building. Mason named it the Quiet Garden, a place to sit without fear. It was there one afternoon that Mason asked, "Will I always live with you?" Ellis paused. "As long as you want to," he said. Mason smiled and replied, "Then I think I'm going to stay a long, long time." And in that moment, amidst the budding flowers and the hum of distant playground laughter, Ellis knew the boy who had once hovered, terrified of a chair, had finally found a place he could truly call home.